Tom, my question is about defining intent. And I have a certain problem with defining intent for my work with the larger consciousness system. And I will try to explain why that is, why I think that is. It's about 2 years ago that in a guided meditation, I had a vision, or I had an experience that completely changed my, well, I think it changed me at a being level. And it was an experience where I went through a door, I went through a light, all that. I found myself in a big, huge, empty, dark space. And the first thing I came to notice were tiny specks of light, colorful little, bright little lights that were floating around in the space. They had different colors and they were dispersed throughout the space. And I came to notice that they were floating around in a certain order. And they came like welling up from a form that reminded me of a donut. And it was a kind of a vortex shape, and all these little specks of light came floating out of the center of the vortex and outwards. And then eventually they flipped back and they were absorbed again in the vortex. And I realized that all these specks they were all consciousness. They were all, well, I didn't know that word at that time, but now I can attribute it. They were all units of consciousness. And I felt that everything was connected. There was knowing everything at the same time. There was just one connected consciousness. There was just this endless love, this knowing that everything is all right. Nothing can ever happen to you. You will never perish. You will continuously, forever, be part of this system. And I had never emotions like that before. I never had again since that time. It was absolutely mind-boggling. And now when I work with my techniques and my tools, I have problems finding intent to work with, because somehow, I don't know, I feel like, why should I work? Everything is connected anyway. So what's the purpose, And I want to contribute to the growing larger good, to lowering entropy and growing love, but I don't feel motivated in, viewing that or healing this or going there or having this experience or that. I really have a problem defining that. It feels so, I don't know, meaningless somehow, that I feel like, oh, am I doing it right? Because I just sit there and I just let this feeling come up. And I feel like that's the whole purpose of it, be part of that and spread this feeling around. And well, I don't know how to put that in words otherwise, but if I try to find an intent for a session, I feel like, I feel like egocentric doing something for me. It's not about me, see, it's about everything else. It's about the world. It's about the universe. It's not about me. And so how could I practice things about me? It's meaningless, basically. And that's why I have a problem finding intent and focusing on it. Okay. It kind of feels empty.
I understand that. Of course, the exercises we go through that require intents are there as exercises to help people get to that point where they know through their own experience that they are one of those little points of light that are coming and going, that they realize that that is them. And once you get to that point, then you realize everything is just the way it needs to be. And you don't have to change anything out there because everything is right the way it needs to be. Everybody, even those people who are doing things that are very dysfunctional, well, that's where their learning point is. Them, that situation, they're making a dysfunctional choice is part of their learning. That they're making choices. That's what consciousness does. They make choices and they learn from their choices. If they're bad choices, they get more pain and more dysfunction. If they're good choices, they get less. And that's the system. So what is it that you need to do to butt into that to change something? Well, nothing. But then the other question that you should ask yourself is, how can I help? Okay, I'm here. I understand. I know I'm one of those little points of light. I know everything is perking along just as it is. But how can I help? How can I contribute? How can I make it better? What can I do to make the evolution a little better? How can I help people change themselves? So that is where you have to come from. And then you find there are things you can do. You can help people, not by changing them. You don't go in and change people. You help them change themselves. And the way you help them change themselves is by giving them the space, the love, the security that lets them kind of go beyond where their sticking point is. Because as long as they feel under attack and under siege, they're not going to reach out for something new. They're going to circle the wagons and they're going to just double down on whatever dysfunction that they've already got. So we help people by giving them environments that make it easier for them to make better choices. Now, we can do that for people next to us, you know, friends and neighbors and spouses and children. We can do that sort of thing. We can not make their choices for them. That would be overriding their free will. But give them the confidence, the space, the encouragement, the love, the security, the ideas that let them then make good choices. Well, that's valuable. Now, what you're doing is, yes, everything was just the way it is, but it doesn't mean that it couldn't be better. It just means that this is the way it is. It's working. It's chugging along. We don't really need your help. We're chugging along. We'll get there anyway. But if you want to be part of that solution, you can make it easier for people to grow up. Now, if you are negative and angry and upset and that kind of thing, what's the matter with you? Don't you see your decisions are wrong? Stop being such a fool, you know? Well, what that does is that negativity makes it worse. Now you're part of the problem, even though you think you're part of the solution by fixing those dumb people who are part of the problem. You're actually part of the problem with them by being sucked into trying to fix them. It's not about fixing them. It's about caring enough that they have a better chance of changing who they are and growing up. So you can actually make it better. You can make it worse. You can do either of those things, or you can leave it alone and just let it chug on the way it is. So those are all three options. I think it's better to take the option of try to make it better. You could just leave it alone and let it chug on. It'll do fine. Those people will eventually learn. They'll cause themselves enough pain that sooner or later, you know, they'll figure out every time I do this, it's just more pain, and they'll stop. But it may take a century or 2 or 3 centuries. And we can speed that up, which would be nicer for everybody if we just help by being positive, by being a good example, by interacting with others. If somebody is really ill, they're having a terrible illness, and because of that, this illness is the only thing they can think about. This illness is something they're, obsessed with. It's there because it's painful and it's annoying and whatever. It makes them do all these things, and their whole day is taken up with this kind of dealing with this illness. Well, sometimes that's exactly what they need. Other times, if you could just give them a break where they could take a little breather and find a bigger picture, they'd start fixing things that created that illness. They'd grow up, but they're so stuck in it that they're not learning. So there's a case where you could heal, and it actually might help them grow up. Not that you've taken them out of the consequences of their choices, but that you've given them a chance to see a bigger picture and do better. So it just depends on the situation. The person, it's not like there's a prescription that'll fit everybody. Everybody's unique. Some people you can heal and it will help them grow. Other people you can heal and it won't help them grow. It just won't have any positive effect on them at all. Oh, they won't be sick anymore, but they'll still be just as ornery and making the poor choices that they've always made. And then they'll go make themselves sick some other way. And you haven't done anything helpful. But the more you grow up, the easier it is for you to discern where you can be helpful and where you need to stand aside. And where you discern that you can be helpful, you should be, rather than just sit and say, everything's perfect, I'll let it go. You can make it better than that. It is good enough just the way it is, but you can be helpful to make it easier for others to fix themselves. And you can do that lots of ways. Individually, you can do that to individuals. You can do it in a way of just helping other people get bigger pictures, helping other people, think out of the box, find something more important than themselves, in life, or just being kind to them, just being a good example, just interacting with people and showing them kindness and caring can have a huge effect on their choices, just because they thought that didn't exist. Who's caring? Only fools are caring. Only people who get taken advantage of are caring. But here's this person who's really caring, and they're not a fool, or they're not taken advantage of. They're really happy. They've got a great life. Well, maybe it is possible to be kind and not just get walked over or run over or taken advantage of, So it changes people's minds just because you're a good example. Well, if you stay locked up in your house all the time, you're not a very good example to anybody. You need to get out and connect and interact with people so that good example, your light can shine. So there's things that you can do to make it better and become part of the solution. And that is what we should all be trying to do. Now, people who are angry and upset and manipulative, they're actually making it worse. They are part of the problem. And then there's the space in between where you're neither part of the problem nor part of the solution. You're just letting it all ride. Letting it all ride, it's still going to get there anyway, because the system is going to succeed. It's going to succeed without your help, but it'll succeed more quickly with your help. So that's the way I look at it, is that you should engage and connect, because that will help others. And I think it's worth it to get there more quickly than to let it take as long as it would otherwise, because the more people grow up, the more happiness, the more growth we'll have. The growth is an accelerating thing. If we grow a little bit, that little bit helps us grow even more, which then helps us grow even more. So it accelerates. And if you can be part of that accelerating process, then we can make this thing work a lot better, even in our lifetime. So why not work to lower entropy rather than realize that the system's going to get to where it's going, whether we do anything or not? So the system, is perfect already, only in the sense that it's going to succeed. It's built to succeed. But still, we can help and be of use. So that's where the intent comes from. That's the driver, is being part of the solution rather than part of the problem. And just sitting in the middle where you're neither is really wasting an opportunity to be part of the solution.
Thank you for your encouragement, Tom. It means a lot to me, and I'm engaging wholeheartedly with everything I have. Thank you.